Hey folks, it's Jim. I wanted to continue on with the video series, The Two Cities, Empty Cities in China. The headline that's going to be the headline of this particular video, which was last week's headline, China to begin importing pilots from around the world with competitive pay and incentive packages. Some of the pay was $200,000 to $300,000. The incentives, not laid out, but I have a feeling, I think I know what they are, and we'll get to this. But any growing economy needs transportation, and China's growing airline industry to move commerce, people, goods and services and so forth, it's really growing pretty fast, and they just can't keep up with it, so they need to import pilots. Much like the U.S. imported the best and the brightest of the world, any great empire throughout history has had to import the best, the brightest, and the true genius of the world. And how do they do that? By offering an environment of greater potential for economic success. And we'll get to all the reasons as to why this is. But when we started this series, China didn't even have an immigration policy. Now it has an immigration policy. The reason they did an immigration policy was because they realized for many nations, or many people, if you leave your country and go to work in a foreign land, you get double indemnity taxation. For instance, if you go from America to Canada, you get taxed in both places. So China, in order to create a better incentive for people to come to China, had to create an immigration policy so they could immigrate to China, thereby subvert the taxation of the homeland. Okay, and that's why the immigration policy is there, and things are going to get much more progressive fast. As China expands and grows, it needs to import genius. They have extreme functionality, but they're going to need to import genius. Something you may have all noticed, remember when Japan first started out, made in Japan was a joke, and then all of a sudden it was the best in the world, right? China is on the same path. It started out, made in China was a joke, now it's becoming competitive, and pretty soon it's going to surpass. The number one selling tractor in the world is Mahindra, coming out of Asia. Think about it, okay? So, and nobody complains about the quality of a Mahindra. All right, and they're getting very good at manufacturing now. The trikes that I've seen around the world, or from different worldwide sellers, some of it's coming from China, and their attention to detail and production quality is getting quite good, folks. So pay attention. You heard it here. Made in China is no longer just junk. Obviously some is, but they're getting very good at production processes, just like Japan did. Made in Japan was junk at one time, became the best in the world. China is about halfway up the ladder and quickly going to the top. You watch. Okay, but in order to do that, they need to import the world's best, brightest, and cutting-edge technological leaders. And that will be from all the engineering institutes, say Carnegie Mellon and University of Orono. I think Carnegie Mellon's number 1 or 2 in engineering in the country or the world, and Orono's like number 3, which is here in Maine. So, but here's the problem: when you come out of these universities, you're like $200,000 or $300,000 in debt, $200,000 to $250,000, let's say, to get a master's degree, right? So, now you go into a U.S. tax system. Say someone offers you $200,000 to $300,000 because you're cutting edge, top of your class, and so forth, and you have some really hot ideas, and you're ready to take off and go. Now, here's a problem. You enter into a tax bracket right off the bat that's about 40% of your income. Then add state tax, then add cost of living and everything else, and and plus your student loans on top of everything. You're not going to pay those student loans off for 10, 15, or 20 years. And that's just the way it is, and you can't file bankruptcy on student loans, right? But let's say, and the reason why China, and this is why I'm pretty sure they did the immigration policy, because let's say China says, come over, immigrate to us. They already give them the job offer and everything. Immigrate here, and we will give you a flat tax of 10% for 2 years. So you can pay your student loans off in that 2-year span. Can you imagine that? Being able to pay off that massive debt load in 2 years, where your peers back in America are going to take 10, 15, or 20 years to pay off their student loans. That's incentive number one. And that's China has the potential to be able to do that. Okay, then the cost of living is far lower. Not just taxation, I'm talking cost of living, transportation, housing, food, everything far less in China. It's very controlled very well over there. So, and that's how their people save 40% of their income, making far less money. It's the way that they live and the cost of living. Okay? So, now you've got two great incentives. Lower cost of living on top of a really great tax deal for the first couple of years that I'm in there. And I'm not saying China doesn't, or taxes its people much less than the way Europe, America, and Canada tax its people. It's based on income. But they will offer these incentives, and mark my words on that. You watch what's coming. And that's why the best and the brightest will flow there. China's not stupid. They don't let Apple, Google, or any big technological company in there that will take over their software and all of that, right? And it all seems to be over control factors, right? That's what it's all about, control. That's not really it. China wants to lead the world in technology, and it will, because the largest consumer base between China and India is about 2.5 billion people. 1/3 of the world in two countries. Add in Russia, Indonesia, all that stuff, right? And I mean, it just goes on. And you've got half the world's people over there in the Asian areas. More than that, I mean, I'm sorry, way more than that. It's all concentrated in this one specific area. And go look all this stuff up for yourselves, okay? So that's where all the growth is going to take place in the next 20 years. It's not in America. Americans are broke, tapped out, and broke again. Okay, that's what Americans are. You got economic growth. They say we're in a recovery. This is a joke. Less than 1% GDP growth per year. Folks, this isn't a recovery. This is a stall. We are in a stall. So anyway, I digress. Let's move on. So add that a tax break for 2 years, and then they'll probably progressively bring them up to 25% over the next 3 years after the first two, and then they'll bring them after 5 years. They'll set them at the normal tax rate for the Chinese that are in China, and that will be the incentive for the immigration to China. How is any great empire built? On immigration, is it not? Rome, Greece, America, these three, for instance. These great empires, what were they built on? Immigration of the world's best and brightest and most productive, to import genius and then breed it into your culture. Think about it. Okay, that's what America did, didn't it? Now, all of a sudden, China gets this immigration policy, okay, and that's why, because it's going to eliminate double indemnity taxation, and it's going to allow them to see true economic viability, whereas there is no future for economic viability in America with a $200,000 to $250,000 debt load to start your life. Okay? But in China, they'll be able to pay those loans off in 2 years. So now, let's move on to another factor as to why people will immigrate to China. And it's the school system. This is for Americans. Europe's school systems are pretty good. I presume Canada's are decent. But America's are crap. Our public school system is a complete and total disaster. Everybody knows this. Granted, there are a few schools here and there that are actually producing successful students as a preponderance. But moreover, they're very subpar. And this is just a fact. Go out and look up the statistics of how America rates educationally with its public school system worldwide, okay, compared to the world. Right? We are poor, doing very poor. So if this also adds another major incentive for, say, a person from Carnegie Mellon meets up with a person from Orono. They're working on a project over in China. They fall in love. They decide to get married. And then they decide, hey, we've got so much extra money, let's have a child, you know? And so think about this next. The school system there is based on discipline and reverence for education if you get the opportunity in China, so it's revered to be able to go there. That's what your children are going to be surrounded by. People who revere education and will apply themselves. And don't you want your children surrounded by that? Right? So think about that. Also, what else is going to be pretty significant about cost of living? Childcare. How much do you think it's going to be to hire a Chinese nanny versus somebody over here? Think about it, okay? So, can you see where I'm going with this? It's just not looking good, folks. I have a feeling there is going to be a flight to quality, and I mean quality of life, to China. It sounds like an oxymoron, but I have a feeling that's what those cities are really about, folks. The lower cost of living, but yet so many incentives with regards to education and other things for children as well, right? So, and how is any great empire built? I've covered it before. By the importation of the world's best and brightest. And this is throughout the history of empires. Look it up for yourself, you know. And America, you know, look at Einstein, Bohr. And look at everybody who was imported into America and made us the technological leader of the world, right? It came from outside the U.S., all that knowledge and genius. And it was bred into our society. At one time, America had more geniuses per capita. Now, I'd hate to see that number. But China's doing the same thing. Remember I said they're using the U.S. playbook. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to import the best, the brightest, the true genius. They're going to technologically surpass us, I would have a feeling, in about 4 years. The producer of the movie Bad Moms, the CEO of that company, said that China will be the #1 media market in the world within 4 years. And I believe technologically they will too. And remember what I said about Made in Japan at one time was a joke and became the best in the world. Made in China is on the same path, only accelerated to become some really, and they are already putting out top-notch stuff. Go look all this stuff up for yourself. It's just the whole of their production industry is catching up. Okay, so anyway, I hope all this makes sense to you. I've got a lot more to cover. It's going to take another video. But these are some pretty powerful incentives. You know, pay and tax incentives. Okay? Student loan payoff much quicker as a result. Cost of living 50%, right? Better school systems if you choose to have children, right? That's why China needed to pass an immigration law. Anyway, I hope all is well. I hope you're enjoying the series. This is all just stuff that I'm throwing out there, and the reason why I'm doing the series is for me personally, and I hope you all get to enjoy it. And I hope it's informative for you. But anyway, when I started this, they didn't even have an immigration policy in China. They just passed it. Now they're openly recruiting pilots. I'm telling you folks, it's just the beginning. Jim out.